Right. Hi guys, good afternoon. It's Darren from Jace Media, and in the chair this afternoon we have blues, soul, R&B, songstress, songwriter, guitarist, Samantha Martin. Good afternoon, Samantha. How are you?
I'm really good, Darren. Thanks for having me.
Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. It was, I was handed your new record 2 days ago, and I, I was blown away.
Well, that's good. That's what we were aiming for.
Just as soon as you hit the play on the first record, you're just sold. It's just phenomenal. There's not a lot of albums and artists that will do that, but I was just, when you get the solid trumpet and stuff like that, and the saxophone coming straight through, you're on a winner.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
It's,
Yeah,
it's
we worked really hard on the record, so I'm really glad that people are digging it.
Yeah, do you know? I think probably a couple of weeks ago, through I think I got a nudge through Noble PR to say that the album was coming available, and I think it's one of these kind of things you get excited, about an artist coming on board, and you think, oh yeah, because you hear little snippets, you think, oh, I bet that'll be good, and what I do when I do my reviews, Samantha, is that I'll play it through once so you kind of get a feel of the album. And then I pour myself a glass of red, and then I get on it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, because I've got the huge headphones on, and I'm just typing away and swigging the red, and just getting more and more into it. So it's a really classy, deep piece of music.
Thank you. Well, you're reviewing how you review albums is kind of how I make them. So
Yeah,
got that in common.
But what I say to people is that how sometimes you get someone comes on and goes, yeah, I played your album, I didn't really like it, didn't like this, didn't like that. I think that that's very derogatory to the artist, because you've spent months writing it, probably 2 or 3 months in the studio, getting the band together, getting the sound right, making sure it's going to work, and then you put it out. And then you've got pandemic, and you're thinking, this is just terrible. And then you put the album out and people go, wow, it's amazing. See, when people say to you, I wasn't sure about this, because what I do is I feel kind of what you're putting down. So I just sometimes shut my eyes and I just get into it and I go, wow, that was just amazing. I told my boss and he's like, is it that good? I said, oh, it's just phenomenal. It's a phenomenal record. It's just really unusual. If you know what I mean. It's unusual from the point of view that you could put it on in the background, you could stick it on in the car, you could sit in the house and stick it on, and it would just kind of wash over you. It's just a phenomenal piece of music.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Not a problem. It's as I say, it's just how it's how I view the record. It's has it been received well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better, like not, I wouldn't say better than I expected, but it's the depth in which people are listening to it. Like, and of course, we've only released one single, Don't Have to Be. And we're about to release our second single, I've Got a Feeling, on October 9th. And I, so there hasn't been the market, like my fans and not a lot of people have been really weighing in on that aspect. But as far as tastemakers like yourself and magazines and the interviewers and interviews that I've done, people have been really receptive and saying very kind things about the record. So
absolutely, yeah. I think that when it goes on general release, I think people will be just blown away by it.
Oh, that's good.
There's not one thing that you just don't like.
Oh, that's good. I'm so glad.
It's got 10 good tracks where it's just from start to finish. It's just, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that. And it's just one of those feel good albums that you could listen to it again and again.
Oh, that's good, because that's what we set out to do. We set out to create like a feel good, driving in your car, or putting on in the background at a party, or putting on the forefront and starting a dance party. That's sort of the vibe that we had. We really wanted people to connect with the music in a way that isn't just about the deep meaning, sort of like behind why I wrote the song, which has been my process for a lot of my previous records. I wanted people to connect with the lyrics and the deeper meanings and that sort of thing. But with this record, there is all of that still.
Yeah.
If you get really deep with the lyrics, but
absolutely.
I also wanted the sonic soundscape to be really fun.
Yeah. Just when you stick it on, Love Is All Around, and you're there, and it just starts with the trumpet, you're thinking, wow, this is just, it's just one of those, Christ, I'm really digging this already, and it's just it's a real toe tapper, and you think, wow, I can get really into this, and sometimes it's strange for a reviewer that they kind of feel that way about a record, because I review 10 hours a day. Every day I just get, my inbox is full of German death metal and blues and rock and funk and jazz, and people say, what about this one? And something, you pick them out, and you think, oh, a new artist. You're relatively new to myself, and I will say that to you, you're relatively new, Samantha, but the way I look at it is that, what have I been missing out on?
Well, it's been at least a 15-year overnight success to get to this point. So,
and but the other way you look at it, it's been 15 years in the making, and here you are.
Yeah.
And here you are, and it's not to say it's taking anything away from, from your other releases that, that really made their mark on, your Back Home CD that was your first out, that people really took to, and I think the expectation is when you do an album, people go, it needs to be better than the last one. But I guess that for you guys, as long as I think you're producing good tunes with nice lyrics and nice melodies, I think people will just really get into you as a performer. I think people go, yeah, it really needs to be better than Back Home, because that was just a phenomenon. But if you don't make something that people stand up and scream and go, it's not as good as this, it doesn't matter, because as long as you're making music for you that pleases you and the guys, I think that really makes you as an artist.
Yeah, I feel like with every record that I've put out, there's been growth, like marked growth.
Yeah.
In my songwriting, in my approaches to the vocals, in the instrumentation, and the people I choose to work with, in the band and in the studio.
Yeah.
The producers always make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And who you choose to, what studios you use, that sort of thing. And so as I've progressed in my career, I've taken the time to do more and more research before I go into the studio. What studio do I want to use? What engineer do I want to use? What producers do I want to use? And what band members, and also just knowing, the other thing is just knowing when to cut the ties on a song that isn't working in the studio. Don't force it. If it's not working, move on, rethink it, come back to it later.
Come back to it, absolutely.
Whereas in the past albums, I kind of went in and went, no, this is all the songs that I have, and they all have to end up on the record. So I've learned my lesson that way. So, the first Delta Sugar record that we put out, I had exactly that many songs. And
there's nowhere to go. You think,
and there's no room for cutting anything there. It's just like, that's all got to be on the record. And so what ends up is you end up having filler on the record, and where people are like, yeah, I like 3 or 4 tracks off the record, but there were a couple that didn't speak to me and a couple that I hated. So then when we went into the studio for Run to Me, which was the second Delta Sugar record, I had way more songs.
Yeah.
You know, like I'd spent a lot more
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I learned that. And then with this record, I had like so many songs to choose from. And
Yeah.
we just,
But
you know,
I guess,
there was a
sorry.
few songs we cut, you know,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
were,
Of course.
yeah, it's not working, move
Yeah.
on. I can look at those songs for a later record if I can
Yeah.
have time to work them through.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, and I think you're right. As you grow in stature, your writing ability becomes more fluent, and your thought train becomes a wider thought train. And you can, instead of saying I've only got 10 songs in me, you can then do 12 or 14.
Yeah.
And you can go, oh, there's one on the floor, I'll pick that up and see how that works. And suddenly, if you've got 10 songs, it then becomes an EP of 6 songs, because you're thinking, toss that on the floor, toss that on the floor. And I think that's the important thing, and what you were saying earlier on about your first album, and the producers you use and the engineers you use. I think as you grow and your popularity grows and your fan base grows and the likability grows,
And
producers
the money grows.
and the money, well, let's not forget about the money.
Yeah,
And
because all this costs money to do. So,
yeah,
as budgets increase, we're able to do a lot more.
yeah, and I think when you get a nice budget, you can choose a producer of your choosing and an engineer of your choosing, because you know they're the best, and they will get the best out of your 10 or your 12 songs. And you go, these are the 12 best songs I've got, and I know that they're going to do really well, because I've got, John Mutt-Lang or whoever it happens to be or whatever to do it. And the reason he's doing it is because we've got the money, because you know that you're going to produce a stonking record that people are going to go, wow, this is our best yet.
Oh, well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you're in Canada just now?
Yeah, I live in Toronto, Canada. Just not sure if the listeners know where, or like, anybody that's reading this knows where it is, but it's in Ontario, Southern Ontario. And
because obviously what we have is, we have probably, I get 80,000 listeners a month.
Right.
So it'll go to the video once it's out. It'll be out probably tomorrow. It goes to America. It goes to Australia. So
I'm glad I did my hair. I didn't realize.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I thought, I need to make sure I'm quite smart, because if I'm not smart, then it's going to come across really badly. But
Yeah, I live in Toronto, and of course with the pandemic, I'm not going many places these days. So
is it still is it bad where you are? Is it as bad as Britain?
It is. There's an uptick right now, because they've sent the kids back to school. So and a lot of the businesses, like the restaurants and bars and that sort of thing, are open. So they did this big opening, and then they've been slowly rolling it back to, because there's a little bit of an uptick, but we're still in pretty good shape. I think just generally speaking, Canadians are fairly good about being considerate of, the population as a whole. So, and that's a very general, we have our anti-lockdown people, and we have our anti-masker people too. But I think as a whole, Canadians are pretty cognizant of the fact that we have to take care of one another.
Well,
otherwise,
all about,
it all gets locked down again and nobody can work. So
are you still able to do gigs, or not really, or is it just pretty bad?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are gigs to be had. But I play with a 12-piece band. So, with the social distancing rules and the fact that the capacities indoors are about 50 people currently, and it's looking like they might roll that back a little bit. Because of that, the money isn't exactly where I need it to be in order to, not pay to play, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's, we are working on setting up a show for this album release party. And that will probably, and there'll be a live stream that accompanies it, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
But, I tend to use the adage of work smarter, not harder.
I think
And
you have to.
yeah, and I would rather play one really amazing show
Than 10 or
and do
12 of
it
the.
right and really push it and that sort of thing than try to do 100 little tiny things and burn out because
30 people, that doesn't make it feasible for you to do it. You're traveling hundreds of miles and going, I'm playing, I've got 12 in the band, there's 30 people in the audience. So but we're just narrowly outnumbered. And I then don't think it becomes feasible for you to do it.
yeah, but it is what it is. And there's a lot, like there are live shows happening. I wouldn't say there's a whole lot of touring
Yeah.
necessarily, just because Canada, because it's such a huge country and there's a lot of time, like unlike the UK or the EU, there's a lot of space in
Yeah.
between the major cities and major markets where you can play shows. So Canadians, unfortunately, are in a position where we can't do a whole lot of touring, just because there's no way to make it financially feasible with the lower
The
capacity.
distance, yeah, and the distance as well, because it isn't hard. Britain at the moment is we I've been in lockdown since March.
Yeah, me too.
I've been home since March, thinking, what am I going to do? The music industry in Britain, it doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere till January or February of next year.
Yeah.
So it'll always be not almost 10 months, and there's thousands of people being laid off in the industry. I always say to people that I'm very privileged that because I can get like your album. I listened to it 2 days ago and I immediately downloaded it. I'm thinking, yeah, that's on my playlist because it's a phenomenal album. Then you've got your fans who have to wait till October, November,
Yeah.
and then you have to wait another maybe 3, 4, 5 months before you can play it live. So I'm very privileged that we get to hear and see videos and streams before anyone else gets it. So it must be frustrating for you guys, especially with a large band that you've got to make sure it's right. You've got to make sure that the travel arrangements are right for you to turn a buck.
Yeah.
And it is a shame that musicians are sitting home with nothing much to do. Yeah, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm writing some new material," but you haven't even played your new material yet, before you just putting your new material out. So it must be frustrating. It must be really hard.
It's, so the way this record came about, the Reckless one, is that in October, November, December of 2019, we were in the studio recording the record. So this is pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Which was helpful because, once we went to
Yeah,
lockdown, it would have been
absolutely.
very
Yeah.
difficult to make this record. But so luckily we had the tracks in the can. And then I had gone on a tour in February for a month with the band. And when I got home in March, as of I think it was March 13th or 14th, they locked everything down in Canada. So at that point, we looked at it as an opportunity to take some more time to mix the record.
Yeah.
We were still at that point in March, April, considering trying to still release the record in May. But myself and the label decided that because we wouldn't be able to support it with tours right away because it was looking like the lockdowns were going to stay in place for quite some time, we decided to wait until November to release the record. So we spent a lot of time in the mixing process and a lot of time in the mastering process. And we took our time with the artwork to make sure that it was like beautiful and all that sort of stuff. So we really just tried to take our time and we're trying to do it right.
Yeah.
And to really make sure that we have exactly the plan that we want in place. And so because we can't tour, we spent way more money this round or on this record on publicists and radio trackers and all the stuff that normally I would have had to split my budget between
Yeah.
radio trackers and being able to buy plane tickets and tour and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas at this point, I was able to really focus the marketing money on, you know, the
Yes. The
marketing
revenue. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
budget on doing all that stuff. So, um, does it concern me that, you know, even though we're planning to tour the Europe and the UK as early as February 2021,
Yeah.
yeah, it concerns me because there's a lot of work going into, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into planning tours and months and sometimes years in advance
Yeah. Of
of
course.
sort of things. So, you know, I'm a little bit concerned. I really hope that all countries can get everything under control and we can get back to touring for sure.
Yeah.
And that there's venues to play because, you know, this isn't
Yeah.
just hard on musicians. This isn't just hard on booking agents. This is and sound people and, you know, the production side of everything. It's really hard to float a venue with no money coming
Yeah.
in.
Absolutely.
So, you know, definitely hoping that everything kind of comes together
Yeah,
and
you hope so. I get, and I say this as well when I'm interviewing people, that I think places like Glasgow, where I'm from, we love our music. You know, we love a good night out. We like to get a few beers and go and support acts that come, you know, from different parts of the world. And I think that when the music industry lifts off, Glasgow will have a gig on every night from
yeah.
some artist in the world, you know, that wants to get out there and play. I talk to a lot of people in Europe and places like Finland and Denmark, Sweden. They're all open for gigs, you know, albeit gigs of 250 people where it might be 1,000. But they, you know, I spoke to a band last week who have got like a 40-date tour,
Yep.
and you think, wow, it's amazing that, you know, that certain parts of the world you can't breathe, and there's certain parts of the world it's like, yeah, yeah, come on in, yeah, we've got a gig, you know, come and watch us play. And I think that's really strange, you know, that you
Oh,
kind of, you know, you're thinking, wow, I wish I lived over there because there'd be gigs every night. But it's just hard. It's hard for you guys, you know. You just you know, and I think way back at the start of the conversation when you were talking about the money you've spent, I guess it's you spend the money on the production and spend way more time on you know the engineering because you know you want to make a record that people are going to go, or they rushed that and it doesn't sound the best, or my God, it's just a work of art because it took time. And I think that's what it's all about. I think take your time, you know, make it the best record you can make it. Yes, if you've got to take another couple of months, do that, and then people will go, it was worth the wait.
yeah. And I think, you know, like I think it's a double-edged sword for artists because we get told that we have to service the market, you know, like the fans and you know, to keep the momentum going. So there's this crazy pressure to record and put out material on a very regular basis.
Yeah,
So, you know, there's a lot of musicians who are like, you know what? Forget the album. We're only ever releasing singles so that we can space everything out
yeah,
and keep the momentum going. But in the blues, soul, you know, vintage retro R&B, like those sorts of things, people want a record, you know?
yeah,
So I'm sort of caught in between the two worlds of really wanting to release records no more than 2 years apart,
yeah,
you know, to kind of
keep
ride out
momentum
the
going. Yeah,
album
yeah,
cycle,
absolutely.
you know, ride out the album cycle as long as I can. And the way you can do that is through touring.
Yeah,
So but the problem is when you can't tour, you're like, oh man, I should probably just release singles. But then I'm like, no, the album, because I went into the process going, I'm going to make an album from start to finish, and I put a
yeah,
lot of effort and thought into sort of how that was all going to play out. So it's, as an artist, I want to put out pieces, you know, like
yeah,
a piece of art, a
yeah,
compilation of where a timestamp of where I am in my
yeah,
career. And I want it to be a collection of songs of no different than like a collection of poetry or, that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah.
So,
Got you. Because I think the thing is, if you put a single out, it's almost like putting together a jigsaw. 6 weeks of a song, see how it goes, and maybe another 6 or 8 weeks we'll put another song out. And I think what you get is, if you get your die-hard fans, they're left wondering, why is she putting a single out? Because I need to wait another 6 weeks for the other single to see if it's as good as this one. And then when the other single comes out, I wonder if it will be anywhere as good as the first. And I think you're right. I think you have to put out your full painting so that people get you as the artist going from the blank canvas to the full works to hanging it in the gallery and people going, there it is there. And I think that's what's important, And I think you're right, I think putting out singles, yes, I've seen a lot of people do that, where they put a single out, 6 weeks later put another single out, and then 6 weeks later put another single out. And you kind of think, it's 3 singles off a 9-track album. Why not wait another couple of months and put out the whole album so people will go and buy a full album and know that when you come to tour, they have the album down, they know all the songs, they know the lyrics. When they go to your gig, they can sing their heart out instead of learning a song and then 6 weeks later learn another song and then learn another song. So I think you're quite right. I think it's the best way to do it. Just put an album out and ride the storm, and hope that this horrible pandemic goes away and that we can get you over to Britain.
Yeah, well, and like we're doing a hybrid
Okay.
of releasing singles and releasing the album. It's a very quick fire release for the singles. There's only 3 weeks in between each single.
Oh, wow.
So we're doing like a very rapid fire single release and then the album, because it was just because like the album says, the reckless one.
Yeah.
Right. We're trying a whole new thing here. Listen, this is not the way people.
Samantha, you're the boss. You want to put out 3 singles? Put out 3 singles. You want to put out the album? Put out the album. You're the boss. Doesn't matter.
So the first single came out on September 18th, which is Don't Have to Be. Then we're releasing I've Got a Feeling 3 weeks later on October 9th. And then we're releasing another single called Sacrifice out on the 30th of October. And then
the album.
21 days later, the album comes out. So it's a very rapid fire sort of thing, because we wanted people to
get a taster,
and like, hey, we're coming for you, sort of thing.
No, absolutely. I think you've got there is so many ways to do it. Bring an album, a single out, wait for 6 months, and bring another one, and people go, oh, well, they kept us guessing, and they brought another single out. But I guess it's hit them with short, sharp prods. 3 weeks, and people go, wow, I can't wait for the album, and bang, and they go, well, it was worth waiting for. So I think that's probably the right way to do it, and then get them ready for it.
There'll be no Chinese democracy.
No, 3 songs, album, let's go. Yeah, absolutely. So what are you doing just now? What's your daily routine? Are you just chilling at home and are you writing music? Are you contacting people? Is it just take each day as it comes?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely at home all the time. But during the real lockdown portions, so from April to July, the end of June, early July, I didn't do a whole lot of creating, except for anything creative, except for working on the mixing of the record and the mastering and the artwork. I wasn't creating new music, because when I'm in a space of, when I'm in it's not I don't want to say depressed, but more like when I'm being like, when I have disappointments, for example, like an entire European tour just disappearing overnight, or every festival that I had booked over the summer just disappearing overnight. When I'm in that headspace, I find it really hard to create music. So the way I create music as an artist is I need a deadline. Like, you need to say, we're going into the studio on this day, and you need to have 30 songs prepared for it. So then 2 months before that, that's when I start working on those songs, and I have this very quick bubble of creation for the songs. And that's not to say that sometimes in that, after that process or in the middle of tours and that sort of thing, that a song doesn't come to me. But I tend to sort of be like a deadline oriented creator. And I basically spent a lot of the lockdown time gardening. You know, my partner and I, we you know, we have more homegrown tomatoes than we know what to do with at this point, and we can't find mason jars to
make pasta sauce.
Exactly. We have so, and I've eaten so much kale, and I've eaten so many vegetables that I just, oh,
At least when you go on tour, you'll be healthy, Samantha. That's the thing. Lots of tomatoes and lots of killing you, lots of iron. You'll be like, let's go. You know, I want to do a 100-date tour. Just line them up, you know, because you'll be full of energy, which is good.
Exactly. So I did a lot of gardening. My dad and my sister, they live north of Toronto, about 4 hours, and the area is called the Bruce Peninsula, and it's right on the water on Georgian Bay. So it's a very deep lake and part of the Great Lakes. And it's on the Niagara Escarpment. So it's got the big sheer cliffs.
Wow.
So I spent a little bit of time up there just getting back to nature, because I live in Toronto, which is a very big city, much like London or Glasgow. So there's there's a lot going on all the time.
Yes.
So it's really
nice to get out and chill.
And take a break. And, you know, I did some canoeing, and I did some floating on a, you know, one of those plastic floaty things in the middle of a lake reading a book. And I haven't been able to do that for 15 years, you know, because every summer, that's when musicians in Canada really make a lot of money playing festivals and doing tours. Well, the weather's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, before the snow flies. So you know, this is the first summer, I think, since I was about 21, where I was able to actually just really sit back, slow down, and enjoy
life. Yeah. And I think that's sometimes what you need, though, Samantha. I think it's, you know, yes, it's good to be busy, but sometimes you need time to slow down and just chill out and, you know, find out what's happening in life, you know, and I think that's nice. And you've had an extended period of that at the moment with the lockdown, which is what it is, you know. But, you know, I hope you get back to it soon. I hope that you come to Britain and you try and get to Scotland, come up to Glasgow.
Well, I'd love to, because I've got Scottish heritage in me, so I would love to come home to the motherland.
Get some haggis in you and get some whiskey.
I'll take the whiskey.
Haggis is fantastic, Samantha.
I you know what? I'm gonna take your word for it. I don't know if I'm good. I don't know if I'm that Scottish.
The next time if we chat again, I'll have some haggis for you, and I'll say, this is it, Samantha. It's fantastic, and you'll enjoy it. But
you'll have to take me to where I can eat the best haggis in Scotland.
Absolutely. You know, if you do get to Scotland or you get to England, you know, look us up and we'll come and we'll review the show for you, and we'll hang out, we'll get a beer, and we'll just chat about this crazy interview we had on Zoom. And I hope that when the album comes out, that it's an absolute roaring success, because, you know, trust me, it's just a fantastic album, and I wish you every success for it when it comes out. And I hope to see you when if you come to these shows. And this is Darren for Jace Media with blues, rhythm, gospel songstress Samantha Martin, saying it's been a pleasure to speak to you, and hope we will see you soon.
I hope so too.
Thanks, Samantha. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.